Good morning. Günaydın. Dear ministers, my good friends, academicians, diplomats, professors, dear students, let me start by expressing my gratitude to the President, Mr. Aydin, for having invited me to attend this very important gathering, this very important forum here in the city of Istanbul. Give me the opportunity not only to address the summit, but also to share some thoughts with you about realities and challenges of our times, directly affecting the academic community as well, not only the societies. This discussion here in Istanbul is timely and topical, given the historic, I would say, moment we found ourselves in, with ongoing conflicts, political and economic instability, as well as a continuous global insecurity. As I said, we're here in this beautiful city of Istanbul, a historical city, a crossroad of cultures and religions. I always call Istanbul as the city of synthesis. A city that has experienced deep changes and transformations, conflicts and tensions through the centuries. It's the ideal place to meet, to discuss, and to think. Ladies and gentlemen, we all know that we live in volatile times. In a globalized and interconnected world, we are all affected by geopolitical instabilities and changes. We all know what are the root causes of the new challenges we are confronted with. Geopolitical conflicts, authoritarian regimes and dictatorships, climatological changes, poverty, religious and ethnic fanaticism. Especially since I have to refer to the area of my responsibilities as European Commissioner, terrorism constitutes a major threat to our lives and to our democratic values. Transnational by its nature, terrorism is a menace that does not recognize borders and affects countries and people irrespective of their geographical location, religion, ideological or political beliefs. Unfortunately, divisive rhetorics only contribute to deepening the gap between our societies. It is a moment for all of us to build bridges, I fully agree with you, Mr. President, and foster mutual understanding and, most importantly, mutual cultural respect. One of the biggest tasks we all face today is our united stance against xenophobia and Islamophobia. Islam, and it is a Christian who says so, in its conceptual philosophy, is a religion of peace, democracy, tolerance, and acceptance. On this road, on this pathway, Islam meets the values of Christianity as a religion and culture. With many of the representatives here today coming from countries of the Middle East, Europe, Africa, and Asia, we are all too familiar with the different faces of terrorism in our societies. Whether we talk about Tunisia or France, Germany or Afghanistan, Bangladesh or the United States, these are only a handful of countries that have had to learn the hard way. But if there is one thing that we have learned very clearly is that we can only fight the enormous challenges together, united, by building a strong alliance against terrorism globally. This, believe me, has been one of my biggest challenges that I had to strive and to achieve in the European Union as the European Commissioner responsible for migration, home affairs, and citizenship in the last 5 years. And believe me, it was not easy at all. I could never imagine, when I was designated Commissioner, with these very important responsibilities, that in a very short period of only 5 months in the year 2015, that these two issues of migration and security would become top priority, not only for the European, but also for the global agenda. So, for this to work, there is no other way but to bring our efforts together, to protect our democratic values, rights and freedoms, and at the same time support those in real need. On the European side, we have been striving during the last 5 years to build blocks towards a genuine and effective security union. And it was difficult, because the deep state still resists. So, unfortunately, for some years, we had to fight in order to convince member states to start trusting each other and exchange information. But we made it. Allow me to say at this point that the European Union was taken by surprise in the areas of both migration and security. Had no idea how to cope with this, no experience, and no strategy. In front of these major crises, we had to start designing the architecture on migration and security policy from scratch, from zero, and we made it. In some months, we had the European agenda on migration and the European agenda on security that works now. We are closing down avenues for terrorists to travel, to train, to finance themselves, and to acquire weapons and explosives. We have strengthened the management of our external borders. We now have, as you saw before in this video, the European Borders and Coast Guard, and we will soon have the EU entry and exit system and the European equivalent to the US ESTA, which will be called ETIAS. Dear friends, in the European Union, we have recently taken several measures to better support our member states in the protection of public spaces, to restrict access to dangerous substances, and to tackle terrorist financing. Terrorists continue to use the internet to radicalize, to indoctrinate, to recruit, prepare, and incite attacks, as well as to glorify their atrocities. Terrorism is somehow defeated on the ground, but not on the internet. This is the reason why, in the year 2015, I took the initiative to set up to create the EU Internet Forum in a voluntary partnership with the internet industry. From Europe, this successful cooperation has gone now global. More than 95% of the terrorist content online is now being automatically removed by the bigger companies. However, the internet is not the whole story. Terrorist attacks happen in the real world, and it happened here. I was there some days after the terrorist attacks in Ankara and before in Istanbul, to share these strong feelings with our Turkish friends and the Turkish society. Now we need to continue to be proactive and reinforce our efforts to better understand the causes of radicalization across borders. This is why the EU Radicalization Awareness Network also works with different countries outside Europe. We are facing the same challenges on the ground, and we can only be stronger together to fight this insidious threat to our social cohesion. Unfortunately, conflicts and instability in our larger neighborhood, and not only, will not disappear overnight. What we all work hard for is bringing back stability and peace to countries like Syria, Iraq, Libya, or Sudan. But in the meantime, we need to continue supporting, helping all those desperate people that are displaced, that have fled the dangers of these conflicts. I wish to first and foremost praise all these countries in the region that have shown enormous hospitality towards millions of displaced people and refugees. Europe has also played its role and will continue to do that. We have received more than 1.5 million people in the last 3 years. Again, we have learned two things have become more apparent. We can and we shall never become Fortress Europe. Europe will remain open, an open space, and a welcoming place for the ones who want to come, of course, following a legal pathway. Saving lives and offering protection to those in need remains our fundamental principle, but we also know that we cannot do it alone. Migration is not an Italian, Greek, Turkish, or Syrian challenge. It has become a global one. We live in the era of human mobility. Today, it's good to know that more than 65 million displaced people and more than 250 million international migrants across the world expect a global solution. The same applies to our wider neighborhood, and there we have to work in order to find common solutions. Our cooperation with all neighbors and key partners has become an essential pillar of the European comprehensive approach to migration. The results and success on the ground of the EU-Turkey statement are one important example. Within 3 years, we managed to substantially reduce irregular and dangerous crossings and saved lives, resulting in a drastic decrease in the number of deaths. This agreement has to be updated and to continue. The European Union also supports Turkey through the Facility for Refugees in Turkey. Thanks to the EU initiative, almost 500,000 Syrian children receive education, and around 2 million people are able to access healthcare. In addition, 1 million of the most vulnerable refugees are now receiving monthly electronic cash transfers to cover their everyday needs. Here I would like once again to praise and commend Turkey for its hospitality and enormous humanity that it has shown towards these desperate people. The current situation in Libya is also of particular concern. You all know the dire conditions that vulnerable people stranded in Libya live in. This has to end. It is a total disgrace for humanity. It is a global responsibility not just to relentlessly continue making efforts towards stability, but also to offer humanitarian support and to dismantle and crack down on the migrant smuggling criminal networks that exploit them. More importantly, the European Union should continue to relieve countries hosting large populations of refugees, such as Turkey, Jordan, Mr. Minister, Lebanon, but also countries in Africa, not least those along the central Mediterranean route through resettlement. Resettlement is a legal way to cut down dangerous and irregular migration routes, while at the same time it respects international human rights principles. But we definitely need to do more. This is also, yes, Mr. President, global responsibility. This is a shared duty of the global community, governments, civil society, academic society, but also the business society. Ladies and gentlemen, Europe and Turkey have a history that goes back several centuries, having shared moments of both peace and confrontations. Today, our destiny, our fate is connected. I am sure that Turkey will continue its European path and come closer to Europe, not only geopolitically, but also as regards to its fundamental principles. These principles are, in fact, Minister, already embedded in Turkey's constitution. All across the world, citizens count on sustained stability and prosperity based on the rights, freedoms, and rules of their democratic societies. It is an ongoing battle we have to keep fighting together. Nothing, dear friends, should be taken for granted in our times. Stability, peace, prosperity, the rule of law, freedom, the cornerstones of our modern democracies are achieved through alliances and partnerships across borders, across nations. The truth is that we all need each other to address these challenges in a better and more effective way, to manage migration more effectively, to combat terrorism by joining our forces to foster trust among us. This neighborhood of Europe has been a battleground of ethnic and religious conflicts for centuries. Today, in front of all these new realities and challenges that I mentioned before, and with the experiences we have acquired throughout the centuries, our generation is called to prove that we have learned the lessons of history so we can avoid history to repeat itself. With wisdom and responsibility towards our future and the generations to come, we can share a vision to make this part of the world a paradigm of peace, stability, and progress. Personally, I'm confident that this academic summit can pass on such a strong message, and each one of us can contribute towards achieving this goal, because everything starts from a conceptual approach and explanation of all the challenges of our times that we are confronted with, linked to history, international law, and ethics. Basics of the supreme mission of academia. This role is attributed to the global academic community that can contribute substantially, putting its ideas and proposals at the service of global democracy, peace, stability, humanity, and mutual cultural understanding. In other words, at the service of mankind. Thank you very much for your attention. Teşekkür ederim.